Live, the monthly web show for higher education professionals who are armies of one or work in small teams. We broadcast on the Higher Ed Live Network, a product of EdUniverse Media. Tune in to Solo Live at 1 p.m. Eastern, the third Wednesday of every month on higheredlive.com, and join the conversation on Twitter using the Solo Live hashtag. Now, we're your hosts. I'm Tanya Oak-Smith.
And I'm Ron Bronson.
And today we're joined by Michelle Tarby.
Hello.
In just a minute, we'll be talking about attending conferences as solo and how to get the most out of that experience. But we can't do that without first giving a shout out to the sponsors that make Solo Live possible. First, we'd like to welcome Omni Update as a sponsor to Solo Live. Yay, Omni Update.
Yay.
Omni Update is the leading web content management system provider for higher education. The company's web CMS, OU Campus, is secure and scalable with great tools and features, deployment flexibility, and an awesome user community. And we really, really appreciate Omni Update's support, definitely. Now, next month, mStoner, a marketing communications agency focused on higher education web strategy and development since 2001, is presenting a 3-part web analytics webinar series. You know the data you're collecting is important, but how do you put it to use? How do you align this data with institutional objectives? And how do you take advantage of Google's advanced features like customized reporting, event clicks, or funnels? You'll get answers to these questions and sharpen your knowledge of Google Analytics with mStoner's webinar series. We're going to tweet out a link right now where you can learn more about the series and register. Institutions can register for individual webinars or receive a discount by signing up for all 3. Now let's get back to the show. Remember, you can always jump into the conversation by tweeting us with the Solo Live hashtag.
Okay. Hi, I'm Ron. She already knew that. So our guest today is Michelle Tarby. And Michelle is an army of one at Le Moyne College, and she creates and implements online tools within content management frameworks and standalone web-based applications. She provides research and analytics to demonstrate success of online initiatives and progress toward achieving desired online goals. That's a mouthful. As social media tools become increasingly more critical, she develops social media strategies and recommends tools to meet an organization's strategic goals. Once the initiatives are in place, she provides benchmarking statistics to measure performance and success. Michelle served on the planning committee of the Higher Ed Web Conference since 2004, acting as co-chair for management, content, and social strategy track at the annual conference. She also has served Higher Ed regional conference planning committees. Founded in 1946, Syracuse's Le Moyne College is a 3,500 student private college which combines Jesuit teachings and traditions while engaging all students into their own development as individual part of the community and the world as a whole at SHU. Just a shout out to our other guest today who is not able to be with us today because armies of one have tough lives. They're trying to do a lot of different things at once. It's very hard, but we want to give a shout out to Grant Cummings, GC Pepper Guy on Twitter. He definitely wanted to be here with us today, but wasn't able to do so. But he's here in spirit. And so, with that, today's topic. Right?
Yes, absolutely. This is a topic that I know Michelle is particularly enthusiastic about, and I'm particularly enthusiastic about because, like, we're so committed to Higher Ed Web that we've basically said that during the conference we'll pretty much do whatever you need to do to make it work. So I want to stop and remind everybody that if you have any questions for Michelle or either one of us, me or Ron, because I like to think of us as both being veterans of Higher Ed Web, then just tweet us using the Solo Live hashtag. So, you know, we want to talk about any advice you have, any experiences you have at the conference or any conferences that you go to. So, Michelle, at one point, and this was a question we originally sculpted for Grant, and I'm kind of upset that he's not able to be here, but like Ron said, it's kind of a bummer that comes with being a solo. Grant was a first-time, or will hopefully still be a first-time attendee at Hyatt Web. And you talked to us about your experience as a first-timer. So tell us about your experience.
Well, the first time you're at the conference, it can be, especially as an Army of One, pretty overwhelming for a couple reasons. You're talking to all these great people that have so much more resources than you and so much more staffing, and you think, I'm never going to be able to do that. But you know what? As a solo, what you have to remember is, yeah, you can. Whether you're presenting about something you've done, whether you're just sitting around chatting with somebody, sharing your experience, you have to be confident that you can do it. It's a real energizing experience, but it can be a little intimidating. So what you really have to do is just jump in and get to know people.
Now, do you have any advice? I mean, other than jump in and get to know people, because that can be intimidating, especially for somebody who can be an introvert. So how do you wedge yourself? I mean, people say a lot of the time that we're a very insular group. So how do you wedge yourself in there? What's just other than just jump in? I mean, what's your advice? And Ron, you were a newbie too at one point, and I can relate my jump in story.
Yeah, I actually do want to. This is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart, as most of you who know me know, but a lot of you who don't know this, is I spent quite a bit of my professional career in Wyoming, which is a state still. And one of the issues with that was I always felt often that I was on an island. I felt like, well, gee, other than my local colleagues, sort of around the state, local being the 10th largest state in the country. So it's a relative term. I didn't always feel like I was connected to the wider audience, and so it's what caused me to blog. It's what caused me to sort of get me into, sort of the wider higher ed community over the last 7 or 8 years. But for a long time, even though I was blogging and I knew all these people online, I had never been to a conference, a large conference before. It was always things came up or I couldn't go. And so it was really in the last 18 months or so that I've been way more of an active conference goer. And so it was sort of weird knowing people but not knowing them. And I remember, I'm not going to say the person's name, I remember going to a conference once and running up to someone that I knew on Twitter who was a good friend of mine now, a guy. And I was like, oh my God, it's so good to meet you. Hey, how's it going? And he looked at me like I was crazy. He was just like, who are you and why are you doing it? And then he figured it out, but it was great. And so the point of that is simply to say that there are a variety of emotions that you may feel from especially if you can follow, if you're active Twitter and if you're watching the show, you're someone who feels like you're connected to the wider community, yet you don't know these people in real life. So you feel like, they're my friends. We talk about food all the time. Yeah, but, I guess, Michelle, I don't know, I guess any of us can talk about this. Michelle, Tanya, you said you would want to tell your first-timer story, but I think that hopefully you're tweeting to us, but people can understand that you're going to have a range of emotions, and that's all right with these kinds of things. You're going to figure out what works for you. For some folks, that's going to be finding a person you know really well and getting engaged and taking that person and tagging along. For me, it was Lena Wines. I went to Penn State a couple of years ago. She was there, and she's like, Ron Bronson, come with me. And literally everywhere she went, I went. And it was the best thing ever because I didn't feel alone. I had someone with me. And I didn't feel as intimidated by a lot of the situations because I felt like, well, I don't want to go with those kids. Those are cool kids hanging out over there. I don't want to do that.
Right.
And I feel that way. So if I feel that way, how would someone else feel? And how do we combat that?
I think that's your point on Twitter is exactly, that's spot on. You feel that you know people. For me, it was a group from Penn State that kind of helped me. My first couple conference experiences, because it was in the time when the conference was always in Rochester, I always kind of viewed it as a chance to catch up with friends who I hadn't seen in a while that weren't attending the conference but were in the area. So I would actually, because I was a solo, I didn't have that level of comfort yet, I would skip the social events. So I would go off, after the sessions were over, I'd have dinner with my friends, hang out with them for the day, and then the next day I couldn't figure out how everyone had started to bond and form these relationships. And how come, I felt like I wasn't a part of it? Well, I wasn't a part of it because I wasn't participating. So you have to make sure that, you really engage in the events. There's a lot of social events that are going on. I always tell new people to kind of look for informal opportunities to get to know folks. When you check in to the conference on Sunday, if you don't have anything else to do, just kind of hang out in the lobby. Talk to committee people, talk to conference people, talk to track chairs, and get to know other folks that are just kind of hanging out. What makes this a great community is we all love to share. And Ron, I loved your blog post last week about, sharing the awesomeness. We want to do that. We want to raise the bar for each other. And, over the years, I've learned stuff from amazing people, but I've also made connections to help me out, and I think that's one of the real powerful things about High Ed Web.
And I think that that's another thing that we can emphasize to first-time conference goers. At least for me, I absolutely love to go in and look at the sessions and see who is talking at different points in the day, and then looking them up on Twitter and starting to engage with them before you get to the thing. Then you've established a relationship before you even walk in the door.
Exactly.
You can ask somebody. It's kind of like Twit Boot Camp that Mayan Plout is doing now. You know, you find a common thread and you hook up with somebody based on that common thread, and then you've got a friend, and that friend can introduce you to other friends, and then you've established a web, not a literal internet web, but a web of friends who will, you know, ask you to dinner, you know, that kind of thing. Another thing that makes it easier to meet people who have similar interests is the thing that we do with the table talk discussions, the times at High Ed Web when we say, hey, if you want to talk to people about mobile, then you need to go and sit at this table, or if you need to talk about content strategy, go and sit at this table, and y'all all go out and eat together, and you talk about this shared experience that you have with this technical difficulty, or this word difficulty, or this professor difficulty, or whatever it is. And then you've created a bond, and it's the same kind of bond that Ron and I created. You know, we're both solos, and that's exactly how we met. We met at a conference. So
we did, and it was just happenstance. And someone said, "Oh, you're interested in that? You should talk to Tanya." And it had nothing to do with Solo World. This happened 3 weeks after we left the conference, and I got an email from her for a video she saw of mine after this conference, and I didn't even know we got along all that when we talked. She was cool. She was like, all right, I'll help you, whatever, you want to do a regional, that's cool, okay, I'll email you, and then that was basically it. And then 3 weeks later, she's like, hey, can we talk about this video blog you did that I did on a whim after work one day? What I was saying, looking at the High Ed Web schedule on my computer right now, and we may tweet a link out to that, but here's one of the things I want to tell newcomers to High Ed Web, and you guys can echo this or add to it. One of the things that's important is there's a mixer that they do for all the conference attendees that's happening this year, right? Board members, right? Okay.
Yes.
I would encourage you to go to that. If you find like you're an introvert, you say, you know, I'm not really big on the social stuff. I'm just going for the work. I want to learn some things. I would still encourage you to go to that. Maybe you don't go meet 100 people or 10 people or 5 people, but here's the thing about that. Went last year, like I said, I know all these people, everybody on Twitter, oh, Ron Bronson, whatever, fine. I went to that event, I was hanging out with an ex-coworker of mine, actually a person who replaced me at one of my old jobs, and we were hanging out, having a great time, just talking, and I was perfectly fine hanging out with her the entire time. I met like 5 people who were sitting by me who just happened to come over, and they didn't know anyone either. They knew each other through just meeting and hey, we're playing ping pong. You should be on our team. You want to be on our team? I said, sure, I'll be on your team. We had a great chat. We talked that evening. It was great. And you just, again, the stuff you're hearing about the community being open, the community being welcoming is not just hyperbole. It's not people just saying this to you because they're on the board. I'll tell you as someone who's not involved in that world that but just for people to understand. Because again, if you're sitting at home, you think, or you see this video later and you think, okay, that's not me though. I can't do that. You can be as involved or as involved as you want to be, or as not involved as you want to be. But it's really truly up to you. If you raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to be interested in this, if you go up to the front desk when you register in the middle of a session or something and someone's sitting there and you say, hey, I want to be really involved, they're going to get you involved, whether it's hooking you up with somebody who's more involved or whatever else. Trust me, this is all a volunteer organization. Folks want people who want to work. So feel emboldened to do that. But I guess what I'll ask, the next question, Michelle, you can answer this, is, so you're a newcomer, and you're looking at the schedule and you're intimidated by everything on the schedule, right? All these tracks, all these different things you want to learn. what would your tip be for someone who's new, who's looking at all of this thinking, well, this is a lot. People are great, but gee, this is a lot of stuff. Where do I even break this down?
There is a lot of stuff, and it gets bigger every year, which I think can be incredibly intimidating. Much as it pains me to say it as a proud track chair, I always tell people to try to go to something in each of the tracks. You know, even if you don't think you're a real technical person, try one of the TPR tracks. Because the first time you're sitting in one of those sessions and you get it and you're following along and you see how it applies in your job, it's really powerful. And, you know, and you're going to remember that. I can still actually remember the first TPR track I sat through and really got something out of it I could use. So don't feel you have to limit yourself into one box. And that's actually one of the real advantages of being a solo is you don't have to do that. So try to experience everything. The other thing is, at the end, on Wednesday of the conference, in each track, there will be a best of session that's determined by your evaluation. So I guess that's one pitch to put out there for newcomers. You'll think people are hammering away at evaluating these sessions. Well, the reason why we do that is because that's really important. Your feedback is important, and your feedback determines which are the most powerful presentations of each of the tracks. So if you miss something, you'll still be able to see that on Wednesday morning. So that's good. But, you know, as I said, don't try to limit yourself. Don't try to fit yourself into a box. Try to experience as much as you can, and don't be intimidated.
I agree, and I hope that we've kind of answered Moonball's question, who says any tips for someone who is a bit shyish, especially at a conference where people have already strong connections. And I think we've kind of touched on that. Another thing that I would say, and this is a call out to people who are established at this conference, or people who are established at every conference, people who are old hats, people who have experienced this conference for years and who are involved as volunteers, or who are not, the rock stars in this community. I challenge you guys to find somebody who looks like they don't belong,
right,
who looks like they don't fit in, who looks like they would rather be anywhere than where they are, because we don't want to make them feel like they would rather be anywhere. We want them to feel welcome, and we want them to come in, and we don't want them to have the impression that we're this group of people who don't want new people, because you never know where your next new idea is going to come from. So, Michelle, do you have any hints for how veterans can help people?
I think you're absolutely right, because I think we do. I think we get kind of not stuck in our groups, but we're so passionate about what we do, and we interact so well, you know, in the online world and in past conferences. You get there, and it's like this big camp, and you're all excited to see people, your old friends. So you really do have to remind yourself, you know, there are new people out there. I know one of the things they've done in the past, like at the orientation, they ask people to raise their hand if they're a first-time attendee. If you've been there before and you're a veteran of the conference, you know, take a look around, see somebody sitting, you know, close to you, and just make the effort to say, hey, you know, anything I can do to help you out, you know, just chat with them, you know, where they're from, what their interests are, you know, what they're looking to get out of the conference, any tips, you know, you could provide them. You know, that human connection's huge. You know, we always talk about being human. Here's one way we can do it.
Yes, I totally agree with that, and I've been trying to do that on Twitter, honestly. If I see somebody who says, I don't know how to exactly mesh, or I need advice on how to go to this conference, or whatever, because I think that's an obligation that we have as people who are in the community and established. Or maybe not. I don't know.
No, I think it is. I really do think it is, because I think what sets this conference apart, I'm sure if I said it earlier, it's by us. It's by web professionals for web professionals. You know, none of us are getting paid to do this. You know, it's volunteer. So the more we can spread that out, and the more we can share that, you know, that's very powerful. So I think that it's a powerful component we can't overlook.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, we're waiting on any questions from you guys, or any hints or helps. So just remember, Moonball.
We'll look out for you, Moonball.
You will be totally welcomed in.
You will be fine.
And what I would tell newbies too is, you see two people here. Ron's not going to be at Hyde Web 13, which boo.
Yeah.
But you see two people here who are perfectly, you know, I want you to come up to me, and I want you to talk to me, and I want you to tell me that you think I'm full of bull when I talk about being human, because that's an awesome thing. or, you know, you don't understand what we do and why we do it. Or you just need to find the bathroom.
Right.
Chances are I'm looking for the bathroom too.
Or you know, when's snack? You know,
when's snack? Where's the coffee? Oh, God,
right. Where's the
coffee? You know, so just come up to us, any one of us, because we'll all have on Hired Web gear too, the people on the committee. So we're easily recognizable. But Ron, I'm going to pitch it to you. Go ahead, Michelle.
I said we'll have badges, you know, and well, the badges also have the Twitter handles on it. So if you may not remember, my first name's Michelle. You may remember Tarbm. So.
Yes, yes. And it's funny, and you can. It's last year at Hired Web, somebody came up to me and asked me if I was Mayan, and that was very interesting because if you know both of us. I wish I had a picture of Mayan. I could hold up right here. But I'm going to pitch it to Ron, and I know you're not going to be there, but I'm sure you're going to be watching the back channel and everything. So tell me what you're going to watch especially.
Well, the first thing is I would also encourage you to be using those hashtags. If you're watching the show, if you're on Twitter, if you're doing Twit Boot Camp, say, and you're just sort of getting into those Twitter conferences, if you're at a conference, the best time to get really active in Twitter is at a conference, because even if you're not tweeting, if you find yourself not being a huge tweeter, which is perfectly okay, you can still follow that back channel. And, I mean, you can find folks who are going to lunch. I know I'm gluten-free, and so every conference I'm always like, all right, where are the other people who are like me who can't eat real food? Let's go somewhere and let's make this work. And it works great at smaller conferences, but at big ones too. And folks just sort of invite themselves, and then you meet all this crazy motley crew of people. What am I going to be watching for? All of the things, but so to be completely honest, I'm looking at the schedule, I think that really there are just so many tracks this year. You know, there isn't going to be I wanted a explosion track, and they rejected my proposal for an explosions track where you can just blow things up. But maybe next year. But I tend to be. I know Michelle encouraged everybody to try different things to every track. I would also encourage you to do that. I tend to be more of a track. I get track agnostic. I go to my track, and I'm a track adherent. You know, it's like I go where I go, and these are the things I know. I did want to say something. I want to tell you one thing though that's important. I think for solo specifically, we're sort of trying to encapsulate this for all kinds of first timers because I think that it's the same. It's a relevant conversation to everyone. But I'd say for solo specifically, I know that I often felt, Michelle touched on this, I often felt in the past, being at small institutions, not having the resources, of feeling like the conversations became less relevant to me as time went on. You go to different chats, and they're like, oh, we did this amazing thing. Look at all the money we spent. We're amazing. And not being able to do those kinds of things and feeling frustrated, like, well, gee, you know, I can't do that. What I would encourage you as a solo to know is that, A, try to pick the different things on your agenda. Say you're the only one going for your institution. Say there are really great things that your boss could benefit from, but your boss isn't there. Or you're the boss, and you've got people under you who could really benefit from some things, but they're not there. Go to a session that they could benefit from. Take notes. Record that information. Take down tips, because you can bring those things back. A, it'll appreciate that you thought of them. B, it'll help them activate them into, you know, a contact that they could have. Maybe after the talk is over, go to the person who gave the talk, and usually a long line, but you can go to a person and say, hey, I've got a person who does XYZ, or I do XYZ thing, or you'd be really great to talk to this person. I'm going to give my card. Hopefully, can you give me your card? I'd love to get in touch. Most people are really receptive, especially if they're talking at a conference. Folks are receptive to that kind of interaction. But so it doesn't have to be all. Gee, I've got to figure all these things out. I have to go to this conference and validate my presence for being there. I need to learn a million things. No, you're going to learn your stuff. You're going to take your notes. You're going to get things out of it that you can get. But you also should bring something home for everybody else. Everybody loves a souvenir. And I don't mean a trinket or a T-shirt. In this case, it's actual knowledge and information. You guys want to follow up and add to that?
Can I just give
Please.
especially a caution for solos? I think because it's such a great conference and you hear so many great speakers, I think at least what I did when I first started attending is I would come home with this huge list of things I was going to do because I saw these great things, I was inspired, and I would write them all down on my whiteboard, and I was really energized, and then 2 months of reality set in, and that list was still sitting on my whiteboard. So I think one way to kind of handle that and keep your enthusiasm is maybe pick one thing that really speaks to you, one thing that your campus is really going to benefit from, and focus on that. Some people at the conference will call it your nugget of the conference. But if you can find that one thing and you can put it into practice based on some of the things that you learned at High Ed Web, that's going to be an amazing experience for you.
I agree with that, and I think that that's one of the dangers that we have. I still do that. I still come home going, oh my God, like this Donna Tallarico had this awesome idea for something to do at Valentine's Day, and and then I rush headlong into it and don't realize that it's not entirely believable for my limited budget and resources and time and whatever. But I think you make several lists of things to do after you leave a conference. I think you exit a conference with a list of things that you know are achievable. Those low-hanging fruits, those things that you can show your leadership and you can say, see, I went to a conference and I got this, and so you can send me to another conference, those kind of things. Those small, or not necessarily small, but stuff that you can do. And then you have a long-term goal kind of thing that you make a list of. And then I think you develop a pie in the sky. Oh my gosh, if I had everything in the world, I would do this. I would redesign my website, and I would totally redo all my content, and I would make the biggest, most awesome website ever, and it would be lovely and wonderful. You got to have that kind of stuff to strive for, and you never know exactly when you're going to be able to do something on that list. Because some fairy unicorn smiled on you and said, hey, here's all the money in the world. You never know. So we have a question here on Twitter that is, is there a recommendation on note-taking? Do either of y'all have a recommendation on note-taking?
Anyone who knows me knows I'm the worst note-taker in America. Like, I remember stuff, and then I email myself the answers. Evernote doesn't work for me. So I'm not sorry. That's terrible, but it's the truth. I go to meetings with digital devices and I write things down, but no. But Michelle's probably got lots of wonderful ideas, but she's awesome.
Thank you. I'm not a huge Evernote fan either. I just use the regular Note app on my iPod or my iPad. But let me give you guys a piece of caution. If you're going to rely solely on electronic notes, last year I had all these great things written down and they're stored in my iPad. I didn't back it up. My iPad died. So it was quite a long time before I got that information out of it. So if you're going to rely solely on electronics, make sure you're backing up. But the other thing I use is SpringPad. I'll put things into notebooks in SpringPad and organize them that way. That's another tool I like to use. Or pad and paper.
Yeah. I find it interesting because I will take notes on Twitter. If you see me at a conference and I tweet things out, those are things I want to remember. Because Twitter is my big bucket for stuff. It's my tool of choice. If I favorite something, then that means, or if I retweet something, that means that I want to come back to it. But I will also have pen and paper because in the environment I work in, it's rude to bring an electronic device to a meeting and take notes. So I'm so sculpted to use an electronic device and a piece of paper that if there is a tangential thing that I have while I'm taking a note on Twitter, I'll write it down. I won't, because it won't make sense to anybody but me. I don't really use Evernote to take notes. I use it to keep up with lists. Hey, maybe. Who knows? Let's see. Yeah, Jessica says that she's heavily Twitter focused in her note taking, and I do too. Ron, you said mental notes. I find that being an old reporter, that mental notes sometimes stick with me. I start constructing in my head a story that I want to tell about this thing, and a mental note is the thing that kicks it.
Well, as a blogger too, one of the things that helps is that, we're always forming narratives between my personal blog, between Higher Ed Solo, between goodness knows what else someone wants me to write for them. I tend to go to these events with, very targeted thoughts, and then other things will happen that are interesting, or I'll go to a talk I didn't think I was going to go to, and, there'll be breakthroughs, and then I'll do a blog post about it. I'm very observational, so I tend to watch what's happening a lot. For those of you, yesterday it was a student who tweeted about, it had nothing to do with anything, but it's interesting. The student tweeted about blogging and wanting to do more blogging, and how do I professional blog, and, how do I do these kinds of things. And I tell you, if you're an aspiring blogger or you're someone who blogs sporadically, conferences are a really great way to make bold observations about things that are happening. Often we all feel like in our own silos, in our own institutions, that we're the only ones going through particular problems, particular issues. And even if you don't talk to someone to commiserate, which you will often do at conferences, it's a really great way to hear the pain points that folks are having, to find out the ways they solve those issues, whether in small ways or in larger ways, and to take those breakthroughs and to use them mentally, write them down or otherwise, as ways to seed your own thought process. And sometimes I find blogging to be a really great way to do that. And so, it doesn't always have to be about, today I feel sunshiny or whatever. Blogging can often be a way to work out your thinking and about how you see things. And the conferences have been a great resource and tool for helping me do my job better. And so I think, and not always from interactions, not always from talking to people directly, often from just being in the room with other smart people who are doing the kinds of things that I either want to do or am doing. It's like going to a really good school. You just sit in a room with smart people, and it's like you have to step your game up because you're hanging with these really smart folks all the time. And whether that means just listening to everything that's happening or not, so for those folks who are like, I'm an introvert, they're not going to any parties, I'm just going to go to some events, and I'm going to go home, you will still pick things up, but just bring your A game. And that just means listening and being activated.
Yes, absolutely. And Jessica also tweeted out to challenge and ask a question of the presenter. And this is it is appropriate for solos. Ask them how you could use what they learned on your level or scale. I think that would be, I love that idea. And I want people, when I'm talking, when I'm up there jabbering, I want people to engage. I want people to give back to me. And particularly, I think it's appropriate for us as solos to challenge people who have never had to face the challenge that we have. Okay, that's good. You had an unlimited budget. How do you go and do what you do and scale it down? We've done that before on the blog. We've talked to people who have done projects that have big budgets or bigger budgets and bigger teams than we have. So how do you take that down to a level that works? Don't you agree? Y'all agree?
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
And y'all have both presented, so how do you feel about questions and things like that?
When I presented, I would much rather, I agree with you, I would much rather have an audience engaging with me and asking me questions and challenging me. I find the same thing when I speak to groups on campus, when I speak to classes. It's much more, they get more out of it, you get more out of it if they're asking you questions. Other than you're just staying there talking and they're just staring at you. And it's the same in this setting. I have seen presenters be incredibly willing to either try to bring it down to a more manageable scale, or be willing to talk to somebody offline even. So again, I think that's part of the community aspect of this, is that people should be willing to.
Should be willing to give.
Right.
And take for that. I often say, if you think that I'm a load of BS, then please tell me, because I'd like to know. And I'd like to, we welcomed Moonball earlier. We've got a tweet in here from CM Butler. It's going to be your first Hyatt Web, your first annual. So I'm assuming that you went to a regional. I'm hoping that you went to a regional. So, hey, welcome. Yay.
Come meet
find
us.
Yes, please. Let's see. Does anybody have any other questions before we jump into probably the part that I'm most interested in? Anybody on Twitter?
Anyone?
Anyone?
Guess not. Doesn't seem like so.
Okay, cool. Let's wrap it up with this question then. It's a huge question. I've asked it like 50 gajillion times on Twitter. What's a must-see for you? And Michelle, answer this as if you didn't have to sit in your track.
Okay, yeah, I will do that. I will do that. And I actually was able to find some. Again, we talked about earlier, I would recommend my session on Got Students, Get Social, because without our students, we're nothing. And all of us, I think, are trying to find new ways, different ways, unique ways to have our students tell our story. So I think that's got the potential to be a really great session. Let's see. I was jotting down some notes here. Sorry, Ron, go ahead.
Oh, no. I was just sort of looking through this and all the shows I'm going to miss and how depressing this is for me.
Oh.
But there's one called I Invited a Geek to the Dance and Loved It. Collaboration unlocks the information hidden in our data, from Donald Malone at the University of Alabama. I think that any kind of collaboration chat is always a good thing, especially in a technical conversation. And so I think that that's a really neat one. If you're even remotely data-minded at all, I think it can be a really interesting talk. Maybe some others that I'm really depressed I'm missing. Another one is actually during the same. It's actually a different time. Sorry, is creating a cohesive website experience from scratch. Jennifer Pope at Rutgers University Camden. I think that's something that's a really relevant conversation, whether you're at a big school or a small school, and I think that'll be interesting chat as well. I don't want to look at it anymore. I'm depressed. Tell me where you're going.
The other kind of theme that kind of struck me this year was there's a lot of sessions on crisis communication, which is becoming, sadly, increasingly important and for us to think about and not wait till, God forbid, something happens on our campuses. So I think there's some opportunity there for people to pick up some new things and new ways of thinking about how to deal with crises when they happen.
Huge thing these days.
Yes, I thought it was interesting in looking through the proposals how many were focused on crisis communication. Yeah. I also think it's interesting that we're seeing a lot more on kind of gleaning content from the community. A lot more discussion about that and how to make that work, with your community. What else you got, Michelle?
The other one I really want to see, and I may step out of my track for this one, is Dave Olson's measuring web performance. Because he's always done such great things. I think measurement's important. I think seeing how all these tools are fitting together, impacting our trends, I think would be that's something I'm interested in. So I think something important to see.
There are so many cool things.
There really are. I know. Even when I was trying to look
I'm noticing
through.
There are a lot of people I've never, a lot of folks that I don't know very well, and I think that's really great. That something that I know that we've talked about, especially last year after Hyatt Web, is let's hear some new voices. Let's hear some folks that we don't know as well, and maybe aren't as involved in these other things because they're doing other things. And I think that the community did a really good job of bringing a cross section of new voices out, and so I'm really excited just to see and to hear from these people, and hopefully this is just the start of hearing from them more and more, because this is obviously an evolving industry, an evolving field, an evolving area, and so you constantly need to hear from new voices and new ways of doing things and figuring out how we can tether all those things together into some sort of coherent narrative for our own institutions, taking what we can. So I
I'm
think
blown away every year when you see the proposals come in. Just the range of things people are doing, the number of submissions we get every year. It's amazing. It's really, really powerful and striking. Just the cool voices that are out there. The other thing that's available is the poster session. That people can attend. I think it's Tuesday afternoon, and that's a real great way to get to know people, get to see some of the smaller scale things, but not smaller scale things people are working on, but see what people are working on a smaller scale. So that's definitely something to check out.
Tanya and I both did posters last year. It's a really great opportunity for you to meet people, on a one-on-one basis. It's like doing a talk, but the person's right there in front of you, so they can tell you as in depth as they want or as little as they want to know. And so it's really great. They usually takeaways that you can take away from there, and so it's kind of like being at a vendor fair, but full of information. So it's really it's just perfect. It's really a great opportunity for the folks who are like, I don't really want to be in a big room. I don't know all these people. The poster sessions are absolutely worth your time. There's not anything else going on during that time. It's a completely separate thing, and so you definitely want to check that out. Probably one of the most underrated parts of the conference, I think, in terms of.
I agree, and I equate it to a science fair for us.
That's fair.
Because you've got people milling around and talking, and you can play off. I think it's a great way for somebody who's never presented to try to present, honestly, because then you can kind of focus on your own comfort level, and exchanging and interfacing with one person, one-to-one. It's a dialogue, and so I can give you what I can give you, and then you can ask questions of me, and it's very personal. So I just tweeted out the link to all the poster sessions because they're always great, and you can always find something that relates to what you do. I'm going to put in a plug for a session that I'm going to be involved in that I would encourage everybody to come to. It is Challenge Schmalenge. We've got this, Women Paving Their Own Way, because I know that in the past year we've seen so much discussion about the space for women in the profession. And I think that higher ed does a really pretty good job of bringing women in and taking our knowledge and using and encouraging. And so we're going to be talking, Karine Jolie is going to be talking with us, a group of like 8 or 9 of us, all in different phases of our lives, about how we got to where we are and how we can encourage others to get to where we are. Because I think that's, you've seen throughout the theme of this show is encouraging people, I think. Right, Ron?
Absolutely.
So I think that's a good session, and not just because I'm involved, but because some excellent women that I appreciate greatly are involved as well.
Okay. Well.
All right.
All right. Well, I thank Michelle for being on the show today.
Oh, you're welcome.
We appreciate you being here. And we want to tune in tomorrow night for Higher Ed Live, where host Mark Greenfield is going to be who happens to be the chair of the annual Higher Ed Web Conference. We'll be discussing the flattening of higher education. That's tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern, same bat channel, different bat time. As always, you can watch more shows from the Higher Education Pros in the archive located at higheredlive.com. We want to thank everyone who's tuned in, and we'll see you guys on Solo Live next month. Thanks, and have a great one.
Or we'll see